Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by Mr. Ethan Taube. Man, he is the new VP of Operations at Agtegra out there in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Ethan, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks. Excited to be here. You and I've spent a lot of time working together over the years here, so
Yeah,
excited to spend a little time talking today.
I'm excited to dive into this. Been looking forward to this one for quite some time. So welcome on. Glad you're here. First question that everybody gets. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, it's proceeding with purpose. It's really holding myself to a standard, right? To kind of be a better Ethan than yesterday. And how that kind of manifests itself is to bring something meaningful to myself, to my family, to my work, and just kind of make sure that I'm battling the complacency that exists in everyday life, right? The comfort of doing the same thing the same way. So to me, if I can do that, I'm accomplishing that intentional self that I set out to be.
Yeah, I love it. Proceeding with purpose, man. Proceed with purpose. I love it. It's easier said than done. Obviously, it's there's a lot that goes on in our day to day lives, and that certainly presents challenges to being able to proceed with purpose and be as intentional as we would like to be. How do you keep it all together? You got 3 young kids at home, young family, VP of a very large number of people, large organization out there. Man, any quick pro tips for holding it together?
Yeah, I think it's all about planning, right? We talk about it in every part of our business, and I tend to be to the side of a little more operational, whether it's a supply chain or anything like that, right? We know what the end goal is, and that's to accomplish what we set out to at the beginning of the day, and part of that goes into planning. So I'm a strong believer in the daily planner mentality, right? Get through and get those tasks out, understand what the things that move the ball the quickest are, but also leaving myself time within that plan to be what I need to be to the people in the organization that count on me, right? For those that need coaching, for those that need that. And that goes to the family piece too, right? I've got to leave time for the dialogue with them to make sure that they're getting what they need out of me too. So
Yeah, right on. What time of the day works best for you? Like when it comes to planning, I know different people do it at different times, end of day, beginning of the day, not at all. So, what works best for you?
absolutely. So I'm a note gatherer. I've been a big fan. Finally got a digital tablet to capture this on. Otherwise, it was post-it notes scattered everywhere and notes in a notebook, and it was this notebook or that notebook. But switching over to that has made a big difference. So I gather those notes all. I'll pull those up first thing in the morning. I'm a little bit of an early riser, so pull those up and really put that daily planner together. And really understand what the schedule looks like. So early morning for me, but kind of based on the notes that as I compile as I finish up and wrap up the day
Yeah,
from the day before.
yeah, beautiful. I'm still in some cases, I need a good brain dump once in a while, you
Absolutely.
know? So
Absolutely. Unload everything. There's so many fragments of information that you gather throughout the day. And it's like, I've got to get that down because there's more of a thought to be developed with that, or there's more of an idea that I can run with that, but it's just not complete right now. And I
mhm.
can't dedicate myself fully to putting that or articulate it how I want to with this individual or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of it. I like to whiteboard. So a lot of things will end up on the corner of the whiteboard, and there's more here. I'm just not ready to process it right now.
right on. Yeah, yeah, for sure. We have a tool that we give out. If anybody wants it, I'll happily email it out to you. It's called the 4D method, I think is what we call it, and it focuses on the 4 things: do, delegate, delay, and ditch. Right. So if it's like 2 minutes or less, do it. Just do it. Don't even write it down. Just get it done now.
Yeah.
um, what can I delegate? Right? Is there something I should be delegating to someone else, or am I just doing this because I'm afraid someone else won't do it as good as I will,
Yeah.
and then I'm robbing others of training opportunities and so forth? And then can I delay it? Right? Is it important but not urgent? To go back to the old Franklin Covey
Yep.
quadra matrix. And then should I be ditching it? Am I just doing this because it's a sort of a sacred cow that we just always have? We just always do this thing, but it sucks up time. We just always have done it that way, but it's an outdated thing.
Yeah,
Can we
I've
ditch
started calling those antique processes. That's my
it?
trademark right now. Is how do we go through and deal with antique processes? It may be something we want to leave on the shelf and go back and look at and learn from, but the reality is a lot of times it's time to put those away and start looking at new ways to do it. So I
Yeah.
love the 4D method. It's something that I consider a lot, and something that a lot of leaders get challenged with, even myself over time, is that delegate piece, right? Because a lot of people aspire to the role that they're in, or the responsibility they're in, because they're great doers.
Yeah,
And it's hard to delegate as a great doer, but that's truly where the strength in a leadership comes from, is being able to rise, a rising boat rises all tides, right? And
for
in
sure.
that opportunity, you get to do that. So dedicating yourself to that and being intentional about that's a huge piece of this as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, big time. If anybody wants our method, and our clients have been loving it, so just email me, mark@themomentumcompany.com. I'll shoot it back to you in an email, give you a PDF of it. For those of you listening in, man, there's so many directions I want to go today, Ethan, and we've only got half an hour, right? So I'll try to be as point as I can to move on to the next thing. But you've been in some businesses, I mean, large businesses, large co-ops, fast moving environments. And I know it's got to be a challenge to really be able to curate the cultures that you want. Everybody talks about culture. Not everybody's doing a great job of implementing it. A lot of it's kind of accidental, and some of it is intentional. I want to just have a quick, at least a 5, maybe 10-minute conversation around this topic today, with you. Like, what are you finding that has worked for you, and being able to build great culture within your teams? I know you got people that love working for you. I've coached some of them, and I know that has been, there's something that you do well. So let's start with that. What has, what works for you in terms of intentionally curating culture within these sometimes large and very fast moving environments?
Yeah, I think really the place to start is understanding the environment you would want to work in, right? So I try to curate an environment that I could be successful in, all
Yep.
while understanding, and it's something that it's a strength that I guess I've developed over time, or it appears to have, at least, be able to understand that what works well for me doesn't necessarily work well for everyone else, right? So what motivates me, what drives me, what situations or environments I find myself most comfortable in aren't necessarily what everybody else feels comfortable in, right? So
Yep.
I have to be open to creating an environment for folks to be successful. And to do that, you have to be really intentional about it, right? You have to gain the understanding by meeting that person where they're at, understanding their motivations, and creating an environment for their motivation to drive them. So to me, it's a lot of discovery, especially coming into a new role, new organization, and that is understanding what the drivers are for the key stakeholders. And again, curating the environment to do that. And it's not always easy, right? Because there are organizations that are positioned to understand what the outside environment is, and there's those that are positioned to understand and adapt for their internal environment. And understanding that direction and allowing yourself to operate within it is a key piece to it. So what does that look like, right? It's meeting with the leaders and allowing them to talk. And I think I've heard that on other people here too. It's spending more time listening than anything else,
Mhm.
understanding the pain points and aligning where your value proposition of the skills that you have apply to that, and just going after it, right? So there's a lot of hesitation
Yep.
when you come into a new organization about, what's the best thing, or what can we do to be better. And I've always been fortunate to be rooted in the continuous improvement mindset. So for me, I'm always looking for the next thing that I can just chop out and do.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's allowed me to be successful. But it's also important to understand that not everybody's pace of change is the same as mine, right? So some
Mhm.
people are going to be more comfortable with jumping on board and taking that ride. And then the next person's going to be looking at this like, wow, this is a really big change for me. Even though it might seem small from
Mhm.
my seat, it's a really big change for that person. So making sure that I'm communicating the why, make sure that I'm spending the time understanding the potential pain points or what they may see as a struggle is a
Yep.
big piece of it too. So that kind of touches on one piece, but the other piece on establishing that culture, or building on something that's good from a culture perspective, is I think everybody gets kind of caught up in trying to take the whole thing on at once. I want to snap my fingers tomorrow and have the culture in this
Right.
organization that I've got. I
Yeah.
want people to do this and that. And it's really about stopping, understanding where you're at, and saying, what's a manageable place to be a week from
Mm.
now? What's a manageable place to be a year
Mm.
from now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then making sure we align that.
Right. So you're breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, as opposed to, and usually a lot of times, let's be honest, we come up with these ideas like, this is the culture that we want, this is what it says it's going to be, and it's like, boom, it's got to be there. Right.
Yeah.
And it's
The vision statement doesn't solve everything, right? It's not going to put everybody in the right mood and the right space to get there. So
100%. How do you solve for buy-in? Like, do you have any particular way or method, or kind of strategy that works for you?
yeah, I think for me, it's about being vulnerable. I think it's about allowing yourself to be in that other person's shoes and truly hearing what their things are. So empathy and sympathy come into play a lot in this, right? I can try to understand where somebody's come from, but I can never truly be in their shoes,
Yeah.
right? So it's really spending a lot of time listening to understand what the drivers are behind the hesitation for the buy-in, because ultimately the opposite side of that is, if you're not getting buy-in, you've got hesitation. Whatever's driving the hesitation is what you're trying to root out. So a lot of people focus on, I've just got to manufacture buy-in. In reality, you have to eliminate hesitation.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Love it, man. What about, okay, what are you seeing in terms of talent attraction, retention? I mean, you guys are in a very rural part of the world out there in Western South Dakota, Southern North Dakota, I would assume, I mean, just a lot of places, I mean, very rural America.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
it's
what's
absolutely
important?
continues to be a challenge, right? It's something that we face every day, and I think one of the things that I've seen in each organization that we struggle with at times is, as we find ourselves being pressured more to find the rehire or the backfill for what that is,
Yep.
it's truly getting concerned about losing somebody, right? And when
Mhm.
we get concerned about losing somebody, we don't actively manage, and we're not as intentional about it because we stop coaching to performance.
Wow.
So to me, it's really about, a lot of people will shy away from accountability in that environment, right? Because they don't want to be too hard on somebody. They're afraid of losing them. But I think it's the time to lean in on accountability for people. And that gets kind of a negative rhetoric, right? It's accountability. That means, writing somebody up or doing whatever that is. But no, it's about identifying when somebody falls short of the expectations. So clearly defining expectations, defining the accountability around the expectations, and creating a pathway for them to get where it is the
Yep.
key. And as we do that, your high performers really like that. Your low performers, maybe one, didn't understand where they needed to be and now they do,
Hmm.
or two, they've started to figure out that they're not the right fit for you, and that's only going to help you build on the culture you're trying to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think there's sort of this like mythology that that we all love autonomy. We all don't want to be micromanaged, but we have this like mythology that's sort of unwritten rule that says that to have autonomy means that you can't be managed, right? And I don't find that to be true whatsoever. But that's how a lot of people show up. And you said something really interesting, so I want to unpack this. So when we have somebody who maybe is not performing at the highest level, we're afraid of losing them. And what we should be saying is we're afraid of losing a warm body. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it bluntly for folks to just give them some language to chew on. So we're afraid of losing a person in that role. So then we stop coaching, we stop managing to performance, we stop holding them accountable because we're afraid you're going to piss them off, and then they're going to leave, and now you're really screwed because that's your Friday night,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Absolutely. Couldn't have
dive
said it
into
any.
this a little bit because that's a
Yeah.
that's a sticky situation.
It is, and it's one of those things that it feels like a counterintuitive approach when you attack this thing, right? Because you're worried about that exact thing, and I know that. So I've always rooted my desire in training my teams to be able to lead with accountability. That there's nobody that we can't live without, but we want everybody that's here, right?
Yeah.
There's everything, we've all heard it, right? Everybody's replaceable, but that's not the mantra we want to do. Is we want to get what we want out of the people we've got, because in the organization, it's a family, right? It's the people that we bring together to do this. And that's not only the people internal, that's our external, that's our growers, our members, the members of our community, and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every person is critical to that environment and that community, right? So we need to make sure that we find a way to make everybody fit, take the actions if they don't, right? But one of the things that became kind of has been an interesting part here is performance improvement plans, the dreaded PIP or whatever, right? People really get into that and they're like, hey, I don't want to do a performance improvement plan because this person's going to think I'm trying to give them an exit strategy, right? Like this is just the way out of here. Where I think it's the complete opposite, right? The minute you start to see performance slip from where you want it to be, that to me is when you take the time to say, hold up, we're going to do this performance improvement plan and we're going to hit this right on the front side so that we don't ever allow ourselves to get to the backside. And if we do, at least most of us are sitting at the table saying, I understand what it takes to get there and I understand what the commitment for me is to do that. And
Yep.
I think that's another key piece of this, right? Is at times from a leadership perspective, especially if you're overwhelmed, especially if you're doing a lot of Q1 living, right? That you're going to find yourself not being intentional with the performance
Mm-hmm.
improvement. And you're not going to be having the once a week meetings to talk about, hey, you did these couple things good and these things bad. So that person's kind of left in limbo.
Yeah.
right? They don't know how they're performing against what you've asked them to do. So, especially if you're going to move to a high accountability culture, you've got to be very intentional with feedback.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, 100%, man. I cannot agree more with everything that you're saying. It's so good. One of the words that we talk a little bit about as it pertains to, setting standards and in just communication in general is agreements and expectations. And, and being clear, like, so what is the agreement, right? Are we clear on what gets to get done here? And do we both agree on the level of quality with which that gets to get done? Right. The expectation is like a certain level of quality. Like there are certain standards, right? It's got to be this or something better, right? It's got to be done by this time and certainly not later, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. So we have an expectation for that. But then, what are the agreements that we have with each other, right? About how we communicate. What are the agreements about? Like, there's just certain ways. Like, hey, if I'm falling down and I'm not quite making it there, like the agreement is, I want you to call me out, right? But also, like, here's how. Like, here's the best way to
Yeah.
let me know. Because I think what happens for a lot of people is they get where we don't like accountability. So people get short, we get
Yeah.
tired, we get behind, and all of a sudden we start to have these stories about each other, and that's where like all like the bad water cooler talk, all the talking behind each other's backs, and that's the stuff that leads to toxicity, right? And that's where I think agreements, right, are really important. Expectations for sure, like it's got to be this. We all have to have these expectations. Those should be clearly communicated. But the agreements, right, that's a deeper level to the relationship, and I would love to see more leaders taking an intentional approach to having those conversations and setting agreements with people. Like, hey, if something doesn't look off, it's okay to shut it down,
Yeah.
even though that's going to cost us time. That's like not only an expectation, but hey, let's have an agreement. Like when that happens, I'm not going to chew your ass.
Yeah. I think that's really well said. I'd probably tie it to safety first and foremost. It's
Yeah.
one of our core values as most organizations. But a lot of times in our industry and in probably most industries, right, there's that tension that exists between productivity and safety, right? Can I can I get done what I need to get done from a productivity perspective while still
Yeah.
managing this other piece? And really, it comes down to prioritization, right?
Yep.
I prioritize being safe over everything else. And that's something that's a challenge in the industry, right? Is because it's always been what's been rewarded has been the get her done mentality, right?
Yeah.
And if there were no negative consequences, then the get her done was great. When there's negative consequences, we go, oh no, you shouldn't have done that. But if we think about that from an expectation perspective, that's
Yeah.
horrible to try to manage, right? Because it
Correct.
only matters when something goes wrong. And I think to go back to that, you talked about the agreement. And I think one of the agreement things that's so important, and it's something that I've really leaned into in probably the last 5 years, is in the first initial meetings with somebody who reports to me, or even somebody who reports to those that report to me, is just talking about how we're going to communicate with one another, right?
Mm.
I have a lot of people that will come to me and they'll say, hey, I would rather you not sugarcoat it and just tell me what's going on. And I'm like, hey, that's something I can agree to. I will be as honest with you, but only if you promise to do it in return.
Correct.
Because I don't want to build into the conversation something that you don't see value in, right?
Mm.
So if we can be honest and candid, we're going to move really, really quickly, right? It's mosquito free. There's no elephant in the room. But
Mhm.
if we can do that and we agree on that, it puts us in a good place. And then we can more clearly define what it is from an expectation. So I think you captured that incredibly well with what you said.
Awesome. And yeah, thank you. Man, there's let's talk a little bit about uh, from a how do you like developing respect, like, so you're newer in this organization, right? I mean, you've been around for a couple of years now, but this is not like you're new
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, right? So what has made, like, how have you built relationships going into this new environment? Like, if there's a lot of people moving around in the industry right now, which is what I'm getting at. There's been a lot of reductions in force, but at the same time, like, as I'm talking to people who are getting let go, they also have 10 job opportunities waiting, of things to go look at. So everybody's going to be new, or not everybody, but a lot of people are going to be new somewhere soon.
Yeah.
Maybe as they're listening to this and thinking about it, like, so what's worked for you? Building relationships, plugging in, getting to know the new culture, earning respect, things like that.
Yeah, I think it kind of ties back to an earlier point, but it's really about spending the time, right? Time is our most constrained resource. So we have to be careful with how we deploy it, incredibly
Yeah.
careful with how we deploy it. But it's about creating an awareness around where your time is best spent. And
Mm.
I think that's something that a lot of people struggle coming into a new organization is understanding those that you want to develop the time with, because they're going to be the ones that support you and allow you to grow within the organization. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's really difficult coming into a new thing because you don't know anybody, right? But we know the hierarchy of most organizations or the structure that exists within there, right? So you
Yeah.
know the people that you're going to lean on as you're getting into there and meeting new people and doing that. So build relationships with those. The other thing is understanding, who those leaders are that don't have a title, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that I've always tried to seek out is every location, organization, or whatever have leaders that aren't titled, and it's about being all in on finding those folks and understanding what they see, where you bring value. The other thing I'd say is just a word of caution to everybody when you come in is with ideas that you have, right? They may be something that works really, really well where you've been before, but trying to deploy that idea somewhere else isn't always the best thing. So don't hesitate to take the time to
Hmm.
make sure that the solution you're offering actually fixes a problem instead of offering a solution that doesn't, because then the credibility and the value proposition is just completely misaligned. You'll end up further behind trying to get the buy-in or the relationship that you wanted to, trying to interject too quickly, right? Now, there's an onus on all of us to, with the pressures that exist, right, to get in
Yeah.
there and start building something around yourself. But just making sure that what you're doing has a value proposition to your team, regardless of how you interact with them, is a big piece. So that's part of my daily reflection is,
Mm.
did Ethan bring value to the people he interacted with today? And if I don't, I own it, right? So I have an example I was going to share with you. I have team meetings with my team at least weekly during our busier seasons. We'll take them back to every other week, just to allow for them the autonomy to go do what they need to do, because we spend all the time planning it. It's about execution at that point. So they don't need to hear the feedback as quickly at that point. But I had a meeting with them and I was disappointed in myself after the meeting. I got off the phone, ended the video call, and I was like, man, that was not a great use of their time. And
Mm.
knowing that time is such a constrained resource, I had to own it, right? So I called
Yeah.
them. I said, hey, I didn't come to that meeting as planned as I should have been. And I know that I didn't make the best use of your time. And I apologize for that. So
Mm.
going forward, I'm going to own that. And I'm
Yeah.
going to make sure that if I don't have a full agenda or I don't have the full thing for the time, that we do that. And I think that helps a lot, right? Because people know they have a lot to do. There's usually people that don't have a surplus of time. So when you take it, you need to at least own the responsibility of doing the right thing.
You got it, man. Super, super well said. All right, let's learn a little bit more about Ethan and your background. Like, what? Let's start with this. What's been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in your career? You're kind of approaching midstream from a career perspective. What's been one of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just I think the biggest challenge has been kind of an ongoing one, and it's just finding the opportunity in a new space to leverage what I have to offer, right? I
Mm.
think that oftentimes we can find ourselves stagnating in a position because we're simply just managing, right? We're watching a process and we're not actively looking to do anything with it. So I think to me, the biggest hurdle I've had to overcome is that complacency piece. And,
Yeah.
and how I've done that is just leveraging the continuous improvement mindset, right? Is okay, this process exists here today, but how do I get a little more? We all know that if there was a 20% silver bullet solution out there, somebody would have boxed it up and sold it to us already, right? But it's about how do I approach each thing that comes to me and try to stack up 21% solutions, right? I
Yeah.
want to I want to come up with the same volume, but I'm going to have to do it incrementally, right? So I think the biggest hurdle and how I put that would be complacency, or just trying to get to the finish line quicker than it needed to be, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that there's steps along the way, and there can be a lot of energy and enthusiasm generated by
Mm-hmm.
looking at that from a step model instead of trying to eat the whole elephant.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. I love it. What's been, if that's the challenge, what's been one of your biggest wins?
I think the biggest win is not only from a career perspective but a personal perspective
Mm-hmm.
was kind of my journey coming to intentionality. I would say,
Mm-hmm.
early on in the industry, I had a lot of senior leaders that spent a lot of time talking about just make sure you do everything to get to the ball game, or make sure you get your time with your family. And I never did. I really wish I would have done it. And after that message hit me so many times, think I just had to reflect back on it and go, these are people that I respect and I admire and I look up to. They all have some degree of that being said in what they're giving me from an advice perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
if I don't do this, shame on me, because these are people I admire telling me not to make this same mistake. And I thought to myself, what do I really do to combat that, right? And it means I'm going to have to be intentional about making the time in the schedule, making the conversation happen so that I can be present. So it's a little of both, right? It enabled me to enhance my leadership at work by enhancing what I was doing outside of work.
Yeah.
To steal something from you, it allowed me to move to surviving to thriving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just so critically important, is understanding the intentionality isn't a hat or a mask you put on when you get to work. It's something that you have to own for everything, because it's
Yeah.
not an on and off switch.
That's right. Yeah, it's one of the things we teach a lot about, right? Is it's not like everything that we do at Momentum Company is a whole person approach. So we'll get hired for whatever sales team development or leadership development or culture building, whatever pick your business problem that we get hired for, wherever the dollars get allocated. Every single time, like we're going in to develop a person to be the whole person, right? Because I think Ethan when he shuts the computer off or gets out of the truck and goes home at the end of the day. It's the same dude.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so when we use terms like work-life balance, then we sort of there's an insinuation that says there's work and then there's home life, right? And the reality is, in today's day and age, like everything is fully integrated. So you have to be even more intentional than our predecessors did. And plus, in today's day and age, like our kids have even more activities. I mean, if I had an activity when I was a kid, like you just got yourself there. Like
Yeah.
mom and dad wasn't coming to watch practice, And so you're lucky to get a ride, and that was nice. It was a nice day, if somebody was given a ride to football practice or whatever. But point being, like there's so much integration of work into life and life into work these days, and so you have to be even that much more focused and have that much more capacity, which is why we focus on mental, physical, emotional capacity as part of a sales training program or leadership training program. I had a guy the other day. He's like, man, I'm so mad at you. He's like, because I come to your program, because I went to your program, I decided to sign up for CrossFit. Now I go every day. I'm like, how are you feeling? He's like, I feel great. And I've got more energy and I'm better, but I still got to get up early and go. I'm like, so he's like, I know that's not sales training necessarily, which is what his project was that we worked on. But he's like, that's been one of the biggest benefits. I said, it's directly tied to everything that you do. It's not a separate thing. Like now you are just a better version of yourself when you're selling, when you're talking to customers, when you're managing your region, when you're doing all the things and being a dad and being a husband, it's like all of this stuff is married together.
Absolutely. And it kind of came to me as I want to be an active participant in my life, not a bystander, right? I don't want to be a spectator to what Ethan's got
Yeah.
going on. So I've got to make it happen.
Yeah. Big time. What resources help you out? Books, podcasts, audiobook?
Yeah.
Like what are you into? What are you listening to or reading?
Yeah. So a little bit of everything, right? I get a fair amount of windshield time, so I like to hit audiobooks and different podcasts up from that perspective. Um, Kind of took a different spin here over the last 3 or 4 years, and when I find myself wanting to sit down and watch a TV show or something like that, I typically try to put a book in my hand instead. And I figured that if I'm gonna take the time, I could probably put it to better use. There's still a few we'll jump in and watch here and there, but by and large, I just try to make a better use of that time. So a lot more of the book reading and
Yeah,
than
good for you.
has been in the past. But lately, a couple of that have resonated with me. The Advantage was great. I had a former leader of mine sent that over to me and got through that. Maybe a little later to the party than some others on that, but that was great. Really enjoyed that. I've always drawn back to and probably consider at least once a week the It's Your Ship book, about turning the worst ship in the Navy around. And that one, I love to throw that one up there for anybody who's coming into leadership, especially if you're walking into an organization or a location or a team that's troubled and really struggling with that delegate piece. Is being intentional about giving out those responsibilities. So that one I call to all the time. And that was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago I read that for the first time, but it's a great audiobook read too if you're a person that likes to do it on the road. So those are ones that resonate with me on a daily basis.
Good stuff, man. Love it. good recommendations. What's something that you're working on this year? Where do you want to take things next?
Yeah, so we're really working through on that continuous improvement mindset and understanding KPIs and metrics, right? And that's something that gets real buzzy and also makes people feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's like, okay, there's a number, and we talk a lot about the science of the business and everything else, but to me, that's all about how do you lead that improvement of yourself, of your team, the development, and all that. So if you can take a minute to step back from that and step outside of your problem, right, and look at it, that gives you the framework to have a development and performance discussion. So for us, it's about understanding what those performance indicators are so that we can coach to it, and then taking a whole organization approach to really maximizing what the opportunity is there and
Mm-hmm.
understanding how those key performance metrics impact our growers, because ultimately that's why we're here, right? We have to create a product, a service, an offering that makes them successful. So really it's about focusing in on what are those key things that we do on a daily basis that make them successful, and kind of Pavlov's dog, how do we keep ringing that bell, right?
Yeah, yeah, good stuff, man. I like it. I like it a lot. What is one of the things that comes up a lot is vulnerability. I think you mentioned it earlier on, so I wanted to
Yep.
make sure to touch back on it. I mean, how important is it? How do you do it without going overboard, right? And things getting wishy washy. Like we got
Yep.
to stay professional to some extent, but also we want to be real. We want to be authentic. So, just riff on vulnerability for me for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the first thing you have to do is you have to get comfortable with saying I was wrong, or maybe I didn't have all of the information when I made this decision, right? Or
Mm,
I could have been better about doing this. And it's hard to judge yourself, right?
mm-hmm.
Especially in front of your peers or those that you work with, or those that work for you and look up to you as a leader, because you see your misgivings or your failure as a failure to lead them correctively. But I think it's the most important thing to tell your team, like, at times I'm going to have to make decisions on limited information, right? And I know I'm going to make some wrong decisions, and we're all going to make them together, right?
Yep.
But understanding that there's an opportunity for us to learn from our mistakes and grow from there is a key piece. But I think the key to vulnerability is you have to be inward first, right? You have to
Yep.
look at where am I going to be most likely to be deficient, own that with your team. But to your point, you can't be indecisive because of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't change your mind so quickly that your team feels destabilized, because again, you're going to create an environment that people don't want to be in. So I always share a picture with my team whenever we get into a busy season or anything. It's a picture of like a Gloucesterman fisherman holding the wheel of a boat, and there's lightning in the background and rain and all of that. It's like you've got to be the person holding the wheel there and doing the best you can, keeping the ship on course, understanding that you could run into rocks, right? Like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're going to be perfect doing that, but they need to see that you're going to be the person driving the direction. But at the end of the day, you're willing to go back despite being that strong figure for them
Mm-hmm.
and own up to anything that was a mistake, a misgiving, or maybe just a place that we got it wrong.
Yeah. So good. It takes a lot of self awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And,
Absolutely.
and time and being intentional for yourself too.
Yeah.
This is the ever present challenge because we're in this. I hate hearing this word whenever I get on the phone with someone. They're like, "How you doing, man? I'm busy."
Yep.
I'm like, well, good for you. Are you productive? Like, are you good kind of, but we're so busy that we don't have anything else to say, which we can't think of anything else to say, which to me, indicates there's overwhelm and overload, which means you really can't be very self-aware and
Yep.
sometimes be the right kind of vulnerable to lead people that way. So for me, that's a big red flag
Yep.
when I start hearing that too much from
Yep.
certain people. There's a certain time of the year, and right now, as we record this, end of April, early May, people should be busy in agriculture. You should be putting things out there. There's a busy time, but there's also a time for rest and recalibration too, right?
Yeah, and I think it keys in on a big piece of this, right? And we talk about it being intentional. It's also planning and all these things, right? So you go out and set the best plan you can for yourself, right? You get the key stakeholders involved. You create that plan. You work to the plan, and you make course corrections as you go along the way. Without that said plan starting out, you don't give everybody an equal footing to start on. So it's critically important that even while we're in a busy season like spring, that we spend the adequate time on the front side of this,
Mm-hmm.
planning it, right? Briefing
Yep.
this, understanding where our gaps could be and how we're going to close them when we get there. And the ever important that we always usually miss is the debrief, right? Go back and do that. And I think that ties into vulnerability well too, right? Because we say, hey, look, I'm willing to go back and look at my performance. Let's go back and look at our performance and tie all
Yeah.
that together. So if your team's not effectively debriefing,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'd spend some time on that, right? Because
Right.
that's going to really, really enact and bring that vulnerability muscle out of atrophy.
Mm-hmm. Big time. Big time. Man, you've given us a lot of really actionable stuff in here today, actually, and so I'm gonna encourage people to shoot me an email if you want to. If you're like, so here's something we're gonna start doing. Actually, is we're putting together worksheets based on the content that we discuss inside the podcast, and so we're plugging it in, creating a little worksheet with just some actionable things from each one. So if you guys are not currently on the email list and getting our updates, so our podcasts come out Monday, they come out Thursday. We do the interview, usually an interview on Monday. We do some sort of teaching or training that goes out on our Thursday episode to bring value to the industry. So if you're not on the list, then you need to email me. Mark at the momentum, THE momentumcompany.com, and make sure that we get you on the list. Just shoot me a message that just says, hey, get me on the list, and we'll get you added. Then you're going to start to get the resources. So we're going to put together a little worksheet with all the actionable stuff that Ethan and I have talked about on here today. So you can take this, take it to your next team meeting, put it up on the projector, or just hand it out and say, hey, here's some discussion points for us. So it's got all the actionables from today, plus some discussion questions for you and your team. As Ethan was just talking about, debriefing is so important. In the training world, believe it or not, we have a saying, at least we do within our culture here. And that's if it's worth doing, it's worth debriefing. And if it's not getting debriefed, then it probably doesn't need to be done.
Well said.
Yeah, exactly. So debrief is a huge one. Cannot agree more. Ethan, the time has gone fast, man. Thanks for being on the show. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to do it. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Good luck with everything as you guys go forward.
Thank you.